ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to give a lecture. I'll just introduce a discussion. And I think that's the most productive way of our proceeding. My name has already been mentioned. I come from Malawi in southern Africa. It's a small country. Those of you familiar with the map of Africa. I find myself in what has already been described here in Germany. Now, the discussion this afternoon says Malawi perspectives on an African vision for positive developments in Africa. I would like to quickly move and say, if I was to revise that topic, I would have said Africa on the rise. I don't want to suggest or believe that there is just a Malawi perspective. Can I remove my jacket? With your permission. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's better. What I want to mention is that Malawian problems, Malawian successes, and Malawi's challenges actually should be common to most African countries. We are not very developed as a nation. We are basically agricultural. We've just gone into mining. We, as an agricultural country, grow for export tobacco, tea, sugar, cotton, food stuff, food crops like maize, which we grow in plenty, and this year we have a huge surplus of 330,000 metric tons. Some of that we do export to neighbors like Zimbabwe and others. We have not done that much in industrialization. But let me not bore you with facts about Malawi. Let me talk about Africa as we see it in the 21st century, because that's more inclusive. Although I said earlier on that problems of Malawi are actually widespread to touch on or transcend the boundaries of Malawi to affect other African countries. Well, let me start with a quote I got from somewhere. And this is a quote which was particularly related to one problem of Africa, and that is trade. The owner of the quote, or the owner of this particular idea is none other than Dirk Nebo, the Minister of Economic International Economic Development and Cooperation. And he said, by 2040, there will be more than 1 billion people of working age living in Africa who will need employment, incomes, and prospects for the future. The only way such prospects can be created is if the economy develops in a positive direction, value creation is increased, productivity is enhanced, and African countries become more competitive in international markets. Now, as I said, this refers to trade. We have done quite a lot to develop trade in Africa, but we still need more, because what we have got is mostly intra-African trade. We need to expand beyond the boundaries of Africa to touch Europe and so forth. Now, there are problems with that, and I want to suggest that time has come when Africa is grappling with those problems to see if we can break through. There is another very important economist. This man was the president, a federal president of Germany, a man called Kohler. President Kohler, Horst Kohler, participated in what ended up as a new global partnership. This is the book that is going to be used to guide our development thinking beyond 2015. A report of the high-level panel of eminent persons on the post-2015 development agenda. Now, he did suggest a few things from this book, and he was a panelist. He was one of the panelists. And he says, and the book, the abridged version, says there will have to be drivers of the post-2015 development agenda which must ensure that no one is left behind. That means everybody must be included. Poor now, rich now, deformed now, upright, physical upright now. Everybody must be included. In this inclusiveness, we must look at, for example, human rights. How do they affect us? How do they affect women? How do they affect the disabled? How do they affect children? How do they affect the youth in general? How do they affect the aged? Are these going to be included? Within that, we should include basic economic opportunities. There is need for that, because otherwise we are going to think about other areas for addressing the post-2015 period in areas such as education, which is very critical for our young children, our youth. But that education is meaningless unless we train for jobs. Basic economic opportunities are not limited to the army, but even the army, as a job, needs training. We will come to that one as education. Because that part, for a country to grow economically, education becomes a linchpin or a central feature of that development. And they say one other driver is for us to put sustainable development at the core. This one almost sums up what I just started saying. We must transform economies for jobs and inclusive growth, which I just mentioned. Then we must build peace and effective, open, and accountable institutions for all. That's freedom from fear, freedom from conflict, human rights enshrinement. Now, Africa has in the past been branded as a continent of war and killing that deters economic development, socio-economic development. Africa is moving from war to cherish peace and democratic institutions. War has nothing to do with democracy. Africans have been in this mode for a long time. Now Africans want to move onto another level. If I may be taken back in time, I think as I'm talking now, I don't know, I can think of the Central African Republic, which is under military rule. The rest have tried elections. They may not be perfect elections, but the attempt to engage in elections is an important indication that Africa is moving into the right direction, because within a democratic society, there will be opportunities for everybody. We will be able to express ourselves freely when we follow, when we pursue, for example, an economic activity, etc., etc. Then there must be an effort to forge a new global partnership to enhance solidarity, cooperation, and mutual accountability. Now, the point I just mentioned about democracy is important. In a military government, democracy is not the most cherished partner to guide operations. There is no accountability. Everybody does things their own way because people were not elected at the polls to occupy government positions. We are moving forward in this particular area. We have tried, leaders in Africa today are bent on trying to stay in power longer than their stipulated periods. I think all of you understand. I can see that some of you people are my friends from Africa, brothers and sisters from Africa. The tendency for leaders to overstay in power has led to revolutions of a type. People have died in pursuit of democracy, and in many cases, this has been achieved, both in West Africa and other places away from West Africa. We are now going to talk about accountability. A leader who has not been elected at the polls, he has no business with accountability. To whom does he worry about being accountable? It's the gun that has helped him. If it's a military leader, it's a gun that has helped him to come up and occupy a position of influence in government. But you see, this is one stipulation of democracy, to be accountable to those who have elected you. Now, let me say this, that in Africa today, not just in Malawi, but everywhere, the major areas that need attention, quick attention, although a lot is being done to address these, would include the following. Firstly, trade and investment to encourage exports. We are able and capable of growing, for example, agricultural products. Malawi now has, this year has produced 330,000 metric tons, as I said. We don't have enough people. We are only about 15 million. We don't have enough people to eat all that maize. What do? We just export it. We export it RAW, raw, instead of processing it. So we need agro-processing to enhance our trade and exports. This is an area which does summon our faculties if we are going to talk about enhancing Africa's image of economic development. Now, needless to say that this is an area which needs partnership, international partnerships. We need public-private ownership. We need partnerships, investors from here, working with people in Africa to move and produce and export. This is very critical. The second one is infrastructure. Africa today is bedeviled by lack of good infrastructure. We need roads, buildings, railways, and so forth. We can develop our agriculture and other areas of productivity. But if we do not have good transport systems, whatever we do is going to end up a failure. In Malawi, we have what is called integrated rural development. Now, integrated rural development means that the people in the villages do not have to migrate into towns. To do that, they are given facilities like hospitals, postal services, telephone, police station, etc., and roads, of course. Now, when the roads are not there, these people are actually good farmers, because Malawi's agriculture actually depends on smallholder farming. These people, if we do not give them roads to take their products to the markets in towns, in cities, their efforts are going to end up in failure. So, beyond that, infrastructure is important, because when we export our goods out of the country, I'm taking Malawi as an example, we need reliable transportation to the ocean for export away from Africa. At the moment, take the case of Malawi, and this is just one case. At the moment, what happens in Malawi is that we are using South African ports or Tanzanian ports to get to our products, our exports, and so forth, to Tanzania, to Dar es Salaam. That's quite a long journey. Or to Durban in South Africa. That's a very, very long journey of about 2,000 kilometers. Now, we would like, Malawi has gone into partnership with Mozambique to see if we can develop a shorter route using our Shire River in Malawi, which joins or falls into the Zambezi River in Mozambique, to go, to develop that route to the Indian Ocean, which is about 220 kilometers, as opposed to about 1,500, 2,000 kilometers to Durban. We are moving in that direction to develop infrastructure at the international level. And this is just so important, because we are now, we are now encouraging, as a policy, what you call integration, regional integration. The other one is energy. I've said, firstly, trade and investment. The climate for investment must be good. We need safeguards so that when foreigners come to invest, their investment is safe, and we don't go grabbing, property grabbing. So I said, first, trade and investment. Secondly, infrastructure. Thirdly, energy. It's a pity Africa today is actually let down so much by energy failure. Malawi is one of them. We have so many blackouts. Some people call them outages. You know, when your lights or electricity or power goes off, your industry suffers and your productivity goes low. Can you believe that in Nigeria, does anyone come from Nigeria here? Oh, yeah, I know you do. Well, in Nigeria, this is not a new problem. Do you know that Nigeria loses 35% of its productivity as a result of outages? Malawi is probably no worse than that. Now, this is an area which we must address. Fortunately, for Malawi, we have had our friends from elsewhere, Americans and so forth, who are coming to upgrade our energy supply. But that's not all. Our energy supply comes from hydro. That's water, almost 99% of it. Now, we want to diversify and bring in solar and indeed wind energy. We are going in that direction where we need to exploit whatever resources around, including petrol. Those who have discovered petrol are in a better advantage than us. Of course, we haven't discovered petrol yet, but we are still exploring for oil. Nigeria is an interesting case because despite the availability of oil in Nigeria for ages, the problem of energy continues to beset that country. Why? Well, that is a different topic. I think it's one of management of resources. And Africa has to improve on that one, including Malawi. The other one I need to mention is food security. So I've said trade, investment, infrastructure, energy, food security is the next one. I've said that those countries that are actually agricultural in their economic orientation must ensure that agricultural products are handled properly. One, to ensure food security is there, and two, to ensure the surplus is actually manufactured or processed. That's agro-processing. Now in Malawi, it's not just maize that we have, which can be converted into cornflakes and things like that, which we don't have at the moment. You also have fruits, a lot of fruits, which can be converted into fruit juices. Or you have oranges, which can be, actually, let me say, among the fruits, you have oranges, you have pineapples, you have mangoes, all those things can be processed. And that is an area which is still a challenge for us, which we must develop to our advantage. But in all this, what is very, very crucial is good governance. Good governance, I've already touched on this one here and there. Good governance means a government running on democracy and rule of law. Without that, it is not possible for us to control corruption. Corruption is a cancer that has blighted Africa for ages. In fact, it's getting worse. Mind you, I'm not excluding Malawi. I'm not excluding Nigeria or even Kenya. It is there and killing us. Because someone said that corruption consumes about 30% of all economic activity in Malawi, in Africa today. Now, that's very serious. We need to address that one as an evil that must be uprooted from our midst. Good governance will ensure that there are laws governing and controlling that evil. Bad governance will lead to connivance of the leaders in that game, stashing away millions and billions of dollars into foreign banks, which would have that money would have actually been used in the country to develop the country, make available health facilities for the children, schools for the children, education, promote education for the youth, create jobs for the youth. There is this irony that in some countries, education goes up, but there is no job. As I said earlier on that quotation, education without jobs does not serve a very useful purpose. And this is an area which we must address. We are on the run to try and ensure that our youth are educated, properly educated. But what type of curriculum are we going to use? That is a challenge. Because in Germany, the movement is towards technical education or vocational education, put it that way. In Malawi, we have vocational education, but not as pronounced as it is here in Germany. The advantage of vocational education is that everyone is training for a particular job. And at the end of the training, the individual can actually set up their own practice and move on. So that reduces the rate of unemployed youth, and the economic development is enhanced. The other one I wanted to mention is also related to the youth. When you have young people, and I think this is an important area which the high-level panel of eminent persons spent time on. When you have young people, you need to study them, to understand them. Quite often, we look at young people, and there are stereotypes in our heads, and we see them and we say, oh, the difficult class of people, the young people, they always want to destroy instead of create. But this is very, very wrong. Sometimes, if there is any element of destruction at any point, It might just be that the needs of the young people have not been addressed. And that is a big exercise we need to engage, particularly those people in positions of leadership, in order for the young people to come up and contribute to the development of their country. They need someone to speak about them and for them. That is something which is still lacking. You go around Africa today, look at the countries that have youth policies. Examine the youth policies. There is always something missing. What there is usually the slogan, or the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. Are you sure the youth cannot lead today? If they cannot lead today, something has missed. I mean, are you there in class where they have their own peer, person as their leader, a monitor or something? They do that job with responsibility. And this is the upgrading of our perception of the youth that will lead to proper and realistic strategies for our youth to develop and develop constructively into the right direction, to support themselves as individuals worth talking about, citizens worth talking about in a particular country. The other one is transport. I think I already mentioned transport. But needless to repeat it, there is still need to repeat it, because if we don't have transport, whatever we do to develop will not find its way to the desired destination. We need to upgrade and improve transport. Now, someone said, when you talk of development in Africa today, you would be remiss if you cannot mention the emerging prominence of tourism. A few years back, tourism was the monopoly of countries such as Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, West Africa, Egypt, North Africa. Southern Africa, probably South Africa, a bit in Zambia. Today, we have seen the fruits of tourism. But you see, tourism is still in its infancy in most of our countries, like Malawi. Malawi, we don't have a map here. I'd have shown you, Malawi is almost 1/3 water or lake. That lake is underutilized. Here in Germany, you have a number of canals and lakes. See what these people, the Germans, do with those lakes in the area of tourism. My goodness, it's amazing. Tourism will have to move a step further for us to talk of having developed it by the middle of the 21st century. This is obviously an area which every country must spend time on, thinking about proper strategies, facilities. And when we talk of facilities, we cannot stop there. Talk about the conducive environment with the people being friendly. Of course, Malawi is dubbed the warm heart of Africa because we smile too much, I suppose, too much by Western standards for visitors. But that is necessary because we are human. Last but not least, there is need, and I think I'm coming back to this because it's important. There is need to control the illicit outflow of funds from our countries by the leaders and the high-class business people. This is important because money is spent in our countries to develop the country. We need a new mindset. How can this be done? Well, it's for you. And I noticed that this is interesting. Most of the participants in this workshop are actually on the youthful side, probably younger than 50. Now, you have a real challenge at the polls to vote us out and make sure that the right people are in. But you see, this is because of corruption mostly. This corruption is a disease. It's almost like inherited from one generation to another. Now, we cannot eliminate this one or eradicate it in one day. It's the mental state has to be decarbonized and move on from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage. By the time you reach stage 5, a country is deemed fairly clean. Corruption will not end completely, but it will be fairly reduced to a barest minimum if we move with honesty and conscience, knowing our responsibilities towards the people that that elected us, and towards a country which we vowed to serve, and the people we vowed to serve. So, I think at the very end, I must mention that we need to develop proper planning strategies in every area of development in our countries. Sometimes this can go off target, and we spend a lot of money on the wrong thing. End of the day, we have wasted. That is very important indeed. I don't want someone to say, oh, excuse me. I forgot to switch off my phone. Sorry about that. I don't want someone to say, oh, money was badly spent on population growth, because Africa today is threatened by population growth. And we really need to watch that one. But if someone says, if I spend money on population growth, that money is not properly spent, that is a misplacement of priorities. To us or to me, that population aspect is very critical, and anyone who does not include it in his planning of a national program, development program, has missed a very important part. For example, also, environment. If anyone does not include environment in the development program for their country, something has been missed out. And the results are very disastrous. Well, I don't want to interpret the world today. I'm not like Wallace Shoyinka, who wrote a book on interpreters. What I see today just baffles me. The natural phenomena, destruction, disaster, flooding, and heavy winds and killing, were killed by natural forces. All these things, so many of them, I'm not very young right now, but I haven't witnessed them all my life. Definitely the first 50 years of my life. No. Why? There is need to understand nature, climate, environment. What can we do to address the environmental hazards? That must be included in the planning. I thought I should leave you with that particular aspect, planning. But now you'll be saying to me, why did you leave out mining? Well, I did mention mining, didn't I? I said there is mining here and there. It's just that we need to follow where the money goes. Mining is everywhere. Countries are getting billions and billions of dollars. But you see, you never see much of this because most of the money are kept where the minerals or the oil and so forth, these things are sold. And that reels back to the area of illicit outflow of funds. Let me stop at this point and say Africa is on the rise. There is no way anyone should tell you that Africa is still dormant. As we are talking now, Africa is experiencing its second scramble. There is a second scramble for Africa. The natural resources are there. China wants to come in. China is already in Africa in a massive way. India wants to come. Brazil wants to come. As I'm talking now, Brazil is building a $1 billion railway line to run from one side of Mozambique through Malawi to the port of Nacala. Now, this is very, very important. Now, we are saying this is the time for Africa to rise and take advantage without actually being exploited. That is the other area we need to look at and to watch, that investment coming in to buy our natural resources are not left off the leash to do their own thing. If we do that, we have lost the game. But we need to watch and make sure that the right thing is done. There is a 50-50 profit in the whole enterprise. Africa is on the rise. Thank you.